caught on camera and beamed via CPAC to the living rooms of people around the country, it would mitigate against their misbehavior. Mr. Speaker, I propose to continue the remainder of my my speech after question period is concluded. Thank you.
Thank the member. He will have 4.5 minutes after question period left in his speech. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Mississauga-Streetsville.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to recognize the opening of Union Park, a new community park in Meadowville. I would also like to commend Councillor Sato and the City of Mississauga employees that made this project possible. In 1957, the Union Natural Gas Company of Canada constructed a gas transmission facility which was operational until the 1960s. In 2012, the City of Mississauga obtained the land from Union Gas. It is now one of the most innovative parks I've ever seen. Complete with a new playground, shaded canopy, walking paths, a dog run, a multi-sport court with basketball nets that turns into one of 2 hockey rinks. Mr. Speaker, the fun doesn't stop there. The park also includes a water feature, adult exercise stations, a tobogganing area, and a skate park with a half pipe. I would like to encourage all residents to get out and enjoy this park. Thank you.
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
Mr. Speaker, 3 weeks ago I attended the breakfast kickoff for Special Olympics Saskatchewan. Special Olympics Saskatchewan is dedicated to enriching the lives of people with intellectual disabilities through active participation in sport. It's part of Special Olympics Canada, an organization with over 40,000 Special Olympians and 20,000 volunteers. Special Olympics builds community inclusion and is good for everyone. At the breakfast, I promised to challenge my fellow MPs to get involved with Special Olympics across the country. So to each and every member of this House, I challenge you to meet Special Olympians in your riding and during their Hill Day on October 25th. Have them tell you why Special Olympics is so valuable. Post it to your Facebook and webpage. Their story of success and inclusion needs to be told. I know you will enjoy meeting these admirable Canadians as much as I did.
The honourable member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, I have the pleasure of congratulating Lucien Rioux, Juliette Thibault, and Adolphe Leduc, 3 residents of my riding who celebrated their 100th birthdays in September. They were babies during the First World War, teenagers during the Great Depression, and young adults during the Second World War. They witnessed the long evolution of our national identity.
Also witnessed the ways in which our world has changed and became more connected, and most of all, Canada's ascension as a strong and respected autonomous state. Today, Canada exists because of the hard work and dedication of people like Lucien, Juliette, Adolphe, and all of our seniors who, for generations past, contributed immensely to Canadian society. I thank them for their lifetime as proud, honest, and hard-working Canadian, and again, wish them a happy 100th birthday and many more to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, Abitibi-Témiscamingue is in mourning. It's with great sadness that we learned yesterday of the death of Mr. Michel Pajot. 30 years ago, this former trapper, along with his wife Louise, founded a shelter for wild animals near Amos, which remains to be a key visit for anyone visiting the region. Once again today, the mission of Refuge Pajot is to take in wounded animals and take care of them and restore their freedom, as well as educating the millions, or rather thousands of visitors who come annually on the flora and fauna of the boreal forest. Michel Pajot was a leading figure of Abitibi-Témiscamingue, one of its most celebrated ambassadors in Canada and beyond our borders. Many will remember this kind trapper who looked like Santa Claus, loved animals, and communicated with them. And thanks to the documentary, Il parle avec des loups, and his book, J'ai entendu pleurer la forêt. I offer my most sincere condolences to his wife Louise, his children, and the members of the family, without forgetting the residents of the Pajot shelter, who's losing their most staunch protector.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians of German ethnic ancestry are one of the largest ethnic groups in Canada. 1 out of every 10 Canadians and 1 out of every 5 live where I live in Waterloo region. Tomorrow marks the beginning of the 48th annual Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest, a 9-day celebration of German heritage filled with food, music, and festivities. Put on your Lederhosen and your Drindels and experience the Gemütlichkeit as you polka the night away at one of the city's 17th Festenhallen. On behalf of myself and the member of Kitchener-Conestoga, Kitchener Centre, Cambridge, and Waterloo, it gives me great pleasure to invite all members to join us tomorrow at noon at Kitchener City Hall as the Prime Minister taps the keg at the opening ceremonies. Thank you.
For Dufferin Paladin.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise today to congratulate the Orangeville Public Library on the commencement of their Canada 150 renovation project. This $275,000 project was approved last year for $91,000 in federal funding under the Canada 150 Community Infrastructure Program under our previous Conservative government. The renovation will include an expanded children's area, quiet study space, an accessible family washroom, and an electrical and lighting upgrades for new technology. The new renovations will help create a contemporary dynamic design that will emphasize openness and flexibility for the future while preserving the library's historic charm. Located on Mill Street in downtown Orangeville, Mr. Speaker, this historic building is an important landmark for the Orangeville community. A recipient of a grant of $12,400 from the Carnegie Foundation in 1904, this key part of our community has been providing exemplary service to the residents of Orangeville for well over a century.
For Vancouver Centre.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to one of Canada's leading architects and urban designers, Bing Tom, who passed away suddenly earlier this week.
Canada's architects, internationally renowned as an urban visionary driven by pure passion, who saw architecture as a way to uplift not only the physical but the economic and social conditions of a community. Bing collaborated with Arthur Erickson to build the world-famous Vancouver Law Courts and leaves behind a remarkable legacy locally in the Chan Music Centre at UBC and internationally in the Mead Centre for American Theatre in Washington, D.C. My deepest condolences to the Thom family.
The honourable member for Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honour to rise today and join Chinese Canadians in my riding of Willowdale and indeed from coast to shining coast in celebrating the upcoming Changyang Festival. Also known as the Double Nine Festival, Changyang provides the cherished opportunity to gather with friends and family in celebration of this ancient holiday. A time for both reflection and festivity, the Double Nine Festival connects us to our past by honoring ancestors and elders while also celebrating the present through picnics, hikes, food, and drink. Whether celebrating with wine or a cake, I wish all those celebrating Changyang a joyous and memorable weekend.
The honourable member for Glanville.
Mr. Speaker, last Friday I held a roundtable discussion in my riding on the plague that is called human sex trafficking. Alarmingly, Ontario has become a major hub for human trafficking. Even more alarmingly, victims are predominantly girls, averaging age of 14. Attending the roundtable are victim services providers, Hamilton Police, and Laurie Scott, MPP, who introduced a private member's bill on the issue in the Ontario legislature. It was unanimous that more resources and collaboration between all levels of government, police services, is what is needed to combat this heinous crime. I know the subject well, Mr. Speaker. The largest human trafficking arrest and conviction in Canadian history took place not far from my home in 2012. I ask all members of this House to work with local victims groups and police, and I call on the government to continue to make ending human trafficking a priority, as our Conservative government did back in 2012 with legislation that's delivered tangible results. Let's hope that there's a Thanksgiving in the not-too-distant future where no Canadian family needs to worry that their daughter's been lured into and lost to this horrible crime.
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker.
Solidarity with Muslim Canadians and Muslim newcomers across the country. When Muslim newcomers decide to leave their country and come to Canada, they often leave behind prejudice and profiling for a better life in this country. Mistrust and fear of newcomers are dismal aspects of our shared past. Recent outbursts of Islamophobia in Alberta reflect neither the best nor the majority of shared Albertan and Canadian values. Albertans have a long history of welcoming newcomers from every corner of the world to build a unique, diverse, and inclusive culture. The first mosque, Mr. Speaker, in Canada, the Al Rashid Mosque, was built in 1938 in Edmonton, in my riding. Les musulmans canadiens.
Canadian Muslims are leaders in all sectors. They're our friends, our neighbours, our spouses, and our fellow members.
16. Every Muslim Canadian is a Canadian. Sont des Canadiens are Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Hull-Aylmer.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in this House today to commemorate the 32nd anniversary of the first time a Canadian flew a NASA mission to space.
After a prolific career as a captain in the Canadian Navy, on the 5th of October 1984, the member for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce Westmount continued to serve Canada by becoming the first Canadian astronaut to go into space. 2 other missions sent him to space, where in particular he was able to operate the Canadarm.
Become president of the Canadian Space Agency and now serves as Canada's Minister of Transport, where he continuously works to improve Canada's transportation system. On
behalf of the citizens of Hull-Aylmer, as well as all Canadians, I thank the Minister for his continued dedication and relentless service to our country. Congratulations.
Member for York Simcoe.
On this day in 1769, Major General Sir Isaac Brock was born. Having built defences to keep Canada secure, Brock took command on the battlefield after the American declaration of war in 1812. His philosophy, a strong offense is the best defense. Brock's military genius and courage inspired the militia. Together with brilliant Shawnee warrior leader Tecumseh, Brock achieved a significant victory at the Siege of Detroit. Brock would later fall, leading a charge of his troops in his greatest victory at the Battle of Queenston Heights in October 1812. His final words, "Push on, brave York volunteers," inspired the Canadians to victory. Today he lies beneath the monument on the hallowed ground of that victory, high above the Niagara River, a visible reminder to Canadians and Americans of the sacrifices made and Canada's victory. Canada's existence owes much to Brock's strong leadership. Having defeated American manifest destiny, Canada thrives to this day as a distinct country in its own right.
The Honourable Member for Long Range Mountains.
Monsieur le Président, je m'élève aujourd'hui pour...
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to salute the work and contributions of the retail industry.
Council of Canada has been the voice of retail in Canada and represents more than 45,000 storefronts of retail format across Canada, from specialty stores to discount stores, from independent shops to online merchants. The retail sector is the largest private sector employer in Canada, employing over 2.2 million Canadians coast to coast to coast, and generates sales over $340 billion a year. It's an industry that touches the daily lives of Canadians in every corner of our country. By providing middle-class jobs, career opportunities, and investing in the communities they serve. I invite members to join me in welcoming representatives of the Retail Council of Canada and retailers in Ottawa today. Let us thank them for helping us to build a stronger, more prosperous, wonderful communities all across our country. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to wish a Happy New Year to all those who celebrated Rosh Hashanah here in Parliament, across Canada and around the globe. Tonight I will be attending an event hosted by the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Centre here on the Hill, and I encourage all members of this House to join me there. I also wish to share with my colleagues that the Tour for Humanity is parked in the East Lawn Laneway. All members are invited there for a group photo at 3:30 today. Rosh Hashanah marks the beginning of a season of renewal, a time to strengthen commitments to making our communities, Canada and our world a kinder, gentler, and more peaceful place. Mr. Speaker, it's been one of the great pleasures of my tenure as an MP to come to better know the Jewish community in Victoria, proud home of Congregation Emmanuel, Canada's oldest surviving synagogue. To my friends at home, in this House, and across the country, Shalom and Shana Tova.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 14 months since the children of Alice and Azar were abducted. 14 months that these children have been in harm's way, first in Kurdistan and now in Iran. When Allison met with the Prime Minister in May, he assured her that he was preoccupied with the case. And yet, nearly 5 months later, Allison has received absolutely no indication that the Prime Minister has done anything to help, nor has there been any progress in the case. Mr. Speaker, as each day passes, the psychological and emotional harm to these children surely worsens. Time is of the essence. It's time for the Prime Minister to demonstrate leadership, take action, and make the return of these 4 Canadian children a priority.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to draw the attention of my honourable colleagues to a special family who is visiting us in Ottawa. I'd like to welcome to Ottawa Kevin, Julia, and the Garrett family. The Garrett family want me to extend deep gratitude to everyone in the House, across party lines, across governments, for all the efforts that helped bring Mr. Garrett home. They also want me to thank the determined professional consular officers who day in and day out look out for the interests of Canadians abroad. Mr. Garrett said to me earlier today, I'm grateful for being Canadian. What a powerful message on Thanksgiving. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of this House, I want to say how amazed we are of Kevin, Julia, Peter, Jeff, Todd, Deborah, and Ed. Their ordeal was long and tough, yet their dignity and strength never wavered. Kevin, welcome home.
Oral questions, questions orales. L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. I'd like to express my emotion for what we just went through, Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence. Yesterday, the Prime Minister confirmed everything that everyone thought, a tax. He said it was a carbon tax, and it will have an impact on all Canadian families. It will mean that they have to pay more, and we can't promise Canadians that products won't go up. Now, I'm not sure who's going to ask today, but the Honourable Member knows full well that it's not appropriate in the House to comment on the presence or the absence of a Member of Parliament. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean can finish his question. I'm sorry, that wasn't my intention. I should have just said someone else may answer. But, Mr. Speaker, the person who will answer the question must confirm that there won't be any other increases in the cost of groceries, electricity. We want those promises today, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Natural Resources.
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, yesterday was a great day, an historic day for this Parliament and for Canada. We ratified the Paris Agreement on climate change. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, not all of us did, Mr. Speaker, and we invite members of the Conservative opposition
L'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Jean.
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean.
Yeah, and you have refused the motion, saying that will not be a higher price for the population. You refuse that too.
That's right.
Mr. Speaker, the new carbon tax, that's the Prime Minister's own word for it, will take more money out of Canadian pockets. Canadians already pay their fair share of taxes and can't afford to see the cost of living continue to rise. Mr. Speaker, I ask again, that's an easy answer to give. Will he promise the Canadian population that the price of grocery, gas and heating will not increase because of this new carbon tax?
Tim. Before the minister responds, I remind the honourable colleague that when he says you in this place, he's speaking of the Speaker, and I don't think he meant that I was doing what he was accusing someone of doing. So now we'll hear from the Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was noteworthy for the historic signing of the agreement. It was also noteworthy for comments made by the member from Montreal Nose Hill, who actually Calgary Nose Hill, who actually took on the job creators in full force. She took on those people who are employing more than 62,000 Albertans. There is applause that the member has taken on the very people who create employment, the very people who are making up the middle class.
The honourable député de Lac.
The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean.
Mr. Speaker, I've said you because I knew you were not voting. But that don't change the facts, Mr. Speaker. Look, ça change pas les.
So it doesn't change the facts, Mr. Speaker. The government can't promise us today that there won't be an increase for Canadians in various prices, and that's the problem. And then they say, well, the provinces will have to be paying that on, so it's up to them to charge their people more. Can the government promise that there won't be an increase in costs for Canadians? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we care about job creation across the country, and we especially care about creating jobs in the energy industry that is hurting because of low commodity prices. So it was astonishing for us to read that the member from Calgary is actually accusing the job creators of predatory practices in a tweet that she sent out for all Canadians and all people around the world to read. We now know who really cares about creating jobs in Alberta, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Portage-Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday in this House, I watched as my colleague, the member from Milton, asked a very serious question about an individual and the negative consequences that this carbon tax would have on this individual. I then saw the Liberals laughing and mocking my colleague and, more sadly, the individual who would be affected. Can the Liberals tell this House what they find so funny about imposing a tax on Canadians who are suffering? And to the Minister of Natural Resources, if he does not realize the suffering that's going on in Alberta and the everyday Albertans who are suffering from job losses because of the Alberta carbon tax and this federal carbon tax, he's more out of touch than I could have.
The Minister of Social Development. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I think that yesterday we had an opportunity to see the passion and compassion of a member of this House. We are all very concerned by the difficulties of facing our families. We show compassion towards them, and what we tried to say yesterday in the House was just how hard this government is working to strengthen the middle class, to reduce poverty for all Canadians.
Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, that's cold rhetoric to Canadians who are struggling. Canadians know that gas prices are going to be skyrocketing under this carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, in my riding, rural Manitoba, there's no public transportation. People have to drive hundreds of miles sometimes to get to work. They don't have a choice. So while the Liberals are laughing at Canadians who are suffering, what do they have to say to rural Canadians who have to drive their car and they're going to be seeing gas going through the roof because of this tax?
Hear, hear. Honourable Minister of Transport.
We understand the challenges facing Alberta families, and we will continue to deliver on our commitments to invest in infrastructure to support economic growth and improve.
Order. Getting too noisy in here. Members don't want to lose a question. The Honourable Minister of Transport has the floor.
Today, the Minister of Infrastructure is in Edmonton speaking to municipal leaders from across the province at the Alberta Urban Municipal Association's conference. Working with our provincial and municipal partners, we have approved 69 projects worth a total of over $3 billion since taking office. Under Phase 1, we have already approved $543 million in federal funding for 66 projects.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 10 years of difficult relations, the Liberals promised that they would negotiate with the provinces in good faith. But Monday, the Prime Minister surprised provinces by unilaterally imposing environmental policy. What's more, the Prime Minister refused the request from his provincial counterparts to sit down now and discuss funding for health. Are the provinces right to be afraid that the Prime Minister is also going to be imposing a health policy? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, as regards health, our government is always on the side of Canadians. Canadians expect us to work together in a spirit of collegiality. That is why I'll be sitting down on October 18th with my counterparts. I'll be working with the provincial and territorial counterparts for Canadians in order to improve the health system in this country. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Well, we need more than words, Mr. Speaker. The provinces need stable, predictable funding for health. The Prime Minister has always said that he wouldn't take action without consulting the provinces. Yet, his refusal to sit down immediately with his counterparts reminds us a little too much of Stephen Harper's attitude. To show us his good faith, could the Prime Minister commit to postponing for a year cuts for health as requested by the provinces? The Honourable Minister of Health. In health, the Ministers of Health must sit down together and discuss what Canadians need. I will hold the meeting. We will improve the health system. We will increase the health transfer. It will be more than $37 billion next year. And we'll be discussing other means, other ways of helping Canadians.
Over Kingsway.
Well, based on the Liberals' actions last week, the premiers have every right to worry. Now, this government promised a renewed health accord that respects the provinces, and the Prime Minister directly said he wouldn't touch healthcare funding without negotiations. But all we've seen is their plan to adopt Stephen Harper's cuts to the transfers, no matter what the provinces say. Many Canadians are starting to ask themselves, Mr. Speaker, how is a Liberal cut to healthcare any different than a cut by Stephen Harper?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I have raised this point in the House before. The approach of this government to health is completely different from what's been seen in this country in the last 10 years. I have been negotiating with my colleagues since the beginning of this year about how we can help them. More money is not the answer to everything that ails the healthcare system in this country. It requires us working together. It requires us making new investments in home care, in making new investments to make sure Canadians will have access to mental health care. It requires collaboration, and that's exactly the approach that we're taking.
The member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Speaker, to paraphrase the Prime Minister, a cut is a cut is a cut. Now, if the Prime Minister proceeds to cut the healthcare transfer, this will cause a loss of $1 billion next year alone and $36 billion over the next 7 years. Now, this will mean one thing: devastating cuts to patient care across our country. So the provinces have made a simple request: keep the 6% escalator for 1 year in order to show good faith and protect Canadians. Will the Liberals reconsider their approach and accept the province's reasonable request?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I want to make sure that the House hears me very clearly on this. There will be no cuts to health care. The Canada Health Transfer is increasing next year by more than $1 billion. But while investments in the transfer have increased at a rate of 6% per year for the last decade. Provincial health spending has not increased at that rate. It's been less than 2%, and it has not helped the system. We have a new approach. We collaborate with our colleagues. We figure out how the system needs to change. We invest in areas that need improvement, like home care. We will make sure that Canadians get the health care that they need.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the new tax on everything, the rural, the unemployed, seniors on fixed incomes, they'll all suffer. This government falsely promised to support the middle class, yet they can't even tell us how much this carbon tax will cost Canadians. Instead of spouting the same lines over and over again about family tax cuts, can't they just acknowledge that their massive tax grab has clawed back all of that and then some? Why doesn't the Prime Minister tell Canadians exactly how much more they'll be paying for electricity, for gas and for heating?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for the question, and I would like to remind him a few facts, Mr. Speaker. We're proud to support Canadians at every stage of their life. That's why the first thing we did, Mr. Speaker, was to reduce taxes for 9 million Canadians. Then we went on to create the Canada Child Benefit, which is going to help 90% of families in Canada and help to raise 300,000 children out of poverty. Then we went on to enhance the Canada Student Loans, which is going to help 250,000 students in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Then we went on to the GIS, the Guaranteed Income Supplement, which is going to make life easier for about 1 million Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Unlike the Liberals, who are out of touch with ordinary working Canadians, we understand that a massive carbon tax grab won't help the environment. It will only hurt the most vulnerable. My friend Glenn is 65 years old, can't afford to retire, and doesn't know how much more he'll pay for his rent, for his groceries, and the heating bill as a result of this massive carbon tax grab. So again, I'll ask for a straight answer. How much will this massive tax grab cost Glenn and other Canadians when a carbon tax is levied of $50 a tonne?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I have to say I'm a little confused with the member's question. When commenting on BC's revenue-neutral direct price on carbon pollution, the Conservative environment critic stated they did the right thing. He went on to say he wouldn't completely rule out a price on carbon as he didn't want to, quote, paint the Conservative Party into a policy corner while leadership candidates and members debate how to meet Canada's 2030 climate targets. Mr. Speaker, how does he reconcile this position with the fact that they just voted against the Paris Agreement and the Vancouver Declaration?
The Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, they didn't understand anything. We agree with the Paris Agreement. Does this government think that it's going to create jobs by imposing a carbon tax? How many jobs does it think it's going to create? None. Are there other ways of meeting the targets under the Paris Agreement? And we did so by leaving a budget surplus. The government isn't being transparent with Canadians who wake up every morning and work hard to earn a living. Will this government finally tell Canadians how much this carbon tax is going to cost? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Reducing our greenhouse gas emissions will make the economy more competitive and allow it to grow in a sustainable way. Pricing carbon pollution will give Canada an edge in building a clean growth economy. It will make Canadian businesses more innovative and competitive, and it will bring new and exciting job prospects for middle-class Canadians and will reduce the carbon pollution that threatens the future of this planet. Job creators across Canada actually agree with us, Mr. Speaker. The Shell Canada president said, I quote, balancing Canadian economic development while protecting the environment will be enabled by a reasonable price on carbon.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, I reiterate, we agree with the Paris Agreement. Mr. Speaker, can this government take a few minutes to think about Canadian families? Well, I'll start over, Mr. Speaker. I won't repeat that we agree with the Paris Agreement, but... Mr. Speaker, can this government think about Canadian families? Has it evaluated their capacity to pay? The Canadian Taxpayers Federation has stated that taxpayers will pay a great deal more because of the carbon tax. Did this government sit down and try to find solutions that won't have a financial impact on Canadian families? What planet does this government live on? It must be pretty foggy there. Mr. Speaker.
Secretary Parliamentary.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, pricing of carbon pollution uses the market to drive clean investment decisions. It encourages innovation and it helps to reduce emissions. That's why 30 Canadian companies have come out strongly in support of a price on carbon pollution. That includes energy companies such as Suncor, Enbridge, and Shell. They know that pricing carbon pollution will bring new and exciting job prospects for middle-class Canadians. But it also includes a number of leading Conservative politicians, including Ontario Conservative leader and former Member of Parliament Patrick Brown, who says, climate change is a fact, it's a threat, it's man-made, we have to do something about it, and that something includes a price on carbon. A price on carbon is coming. It's going to come everywhere.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals keep quoting millionaire CEOs in defense of the new carbon tax. But like their millionaire friends, the Liberals don't care about the real impact the carbon tax will have on small business owners. This tax will drive up costs for restaurants and retailers and make small businesses less competitive for international markets. The Liberals seem determined to run our small businesses into the ground. How can they justify increasing the tax burden on our small businesses again?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleague has clearly mentioned, putting a price on pollution creates predictability, and that predictability is so important for businesses, including small businesses. That allows them the ability to innovate, come up with new clean tech jobs. These jobs will be created from coast to coast to coast, and this is the kind of initiative that we want. We want to grow the economy. We want to help small businesses, and we're going to put forward an innovation agenda that focuses on small businesses and clean jobs, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals love to quote from millionaire CEOs from billionaire companies as being super supportive of a carbon tax, but they never talk about supporting the over 100,000 energy workers who have been put out of work since they took office. Many have exhausted their severance pay and employment insurance, if they had any, and their savings are gone. And instead of throwing them a lifeline, this government has thrown them an anvil. How can the Prime Minister justify sending a new tax bill to out-of-work energy workers who are using the food bank and losing their homes?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we are very much concerned about what's going on for Canadian families. That's why the first thing we did was to reduce taxes for 9 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Then we went on with the Canada Child Benefit, which are measures which are helping Canadian families. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that we are helping millions of Canadian families, and we will continue to do that because that's the right thing to do. And the plan of Canada has been applauded around the world. I want to invite my colleagues to read and see what we're doing. Our program is applauded around the world, and we're helping Canadian families.
Order. Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, for no reason, the government announced it would wait 2 more years before introducing pay equity legislation. The Canadian Labour Congress says, and I quote, after all the expert testimony and with the task force and committee's recommendations in hand, it's unacceptable that the government would decide to make women wait another 2 years for pay equity legislation, a human right. Women should not have to wait until 2018 for the government to act. Will the minister introduce proactive pay equity legislation before the end of this year?
The Minister of Employment and Labour.
Mr. Speaker, I am so glad for the opportunity to indicate to this House that this is a government that is not going to sit on the sidelines when it comes to pay equity. For 12 years, the previous government did nothing. We're proud to say that we're implementing proactive pay equity legislation. We're moving on it from the day that we got elected, and now we're going to be bringing in legislation to make it happen.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, but it's 2016, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the government told Canadian women they would have to wait yet again. Pay equity is a fundamental right, and Canadian women have already waited far too long for their rights to be respected. The Pay Equity Task Force published a report 12 years ago. Enough is enough. Why is the Liberal government taking so long to do what's right for women? Will the government take swift action and table proactive legislation on pay equity before the end of 2016?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The federal regulated industries that are included in the proactive legislation includes 8,740,000 employees and 10,800 employers. All of them need to be consulted and worked with, a process that's complicated and will take some time. We do want, Mr. Speaker, to have understanding and cooperation from the private sector, and we're working hard to make this as reasonable as possible.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, now we've known for months now that this government has a great deal of difficulty managing public funds. But now we understand that they don't even know how to count. It's not us saying that, it's Stats Can. For weeks now the government's been saying there will be many more young people who'll be working in the summer, there'll be summer jobs. But that's a mistake, because Stats Can has informed us today that the same number of young people worked this past summer as the summer before under the Conservative government. So when it comes time to create taxes, they're champions. But when it comes to creating jobs, no.
Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for the opportunity to indicate that businesses actually want young people to have some experience and to work in the real world. And that's exactly what this government provided young people this past summer by investing and doubling the number of students, actually even more. 78,500 young people had an opportunity to get valuable work experience. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Lethbridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the problem with the honourable member's argument from across the aisle is that although these students enjoyed a summer job, they now are pressed with the task of having to find a job that will continue to put them through school, and they're finding it difficult to do so. Why is this so? It is so because there are small businesses across this country that are having a hard time making ends meet and are cutting back on the number of employees that they are hiring, which means that youth are going without meaningful employment, which means that youth are finding it hard to put themselves through school. And so, Mr. Speaker, my question is, will the Liberals just simply continue to pay lip service to their desire to serve students, or will they
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to say that not only have we provided job experiences for young people, we've provided student grants that have reduced the debt that young people will have to face and provide a more successful transition from education into the workforce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
What they provided, Mr. Speaker, is lip service. Of the hundreds of campaign promises, Mr. Speaker, there wasn't a single mention of softwood lumber in the Liberal campaign platform, not in the speech from the throne, not in the minister's mandate letter. One of the most important trade deals between Canada and the U.S., and not a single mention, Mr. Speaker, zero. In 6 days, the current softwood agreement ends. What will it take for the Prime Minister to acknowledge the incompetence of this trade minister and pick up the phone, call us BFF, and protect and save the 400,000 jobs in the forestry industry?
Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by reminding the members opposite that this accord expired under the previous government's watch. Yesterday, I was in Toronto negotiating with Mike Froman with representatives of our industry from across the country. U.S. negotiators are still in Toronto talking to my team. And I'd like to remind the member for Caribou Prince George of something he said in committee on August 18th, and I'm quoting him. I can appreciate that there's been a considerable amount of work done by both Global Affairs and the Ministry. Thanks, we are working hard.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Minister should put more effort on finding a solution than those words that aren't reassuring. The government has no will to resolve this issue. The Prime Minister doesn't want to displease his U.S. friends. That's the real story. We've seen that with the dye-filtered milk. We're seeing the same problem recur. Mr. Speaker, thousands of families, workers, communities, small businesses, entire communities are threatened by this government's lack of action. Mr. Speaker, how many thousands of jobs will it take before you take action. I think the honourable member knows, as I said earlier, that when you use the word you, you're addressing the Speaker. The Honourable Minister. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to underscore that the agreement, the softwood lumber agreement, expired under the previous government. 4 months now we have committed to working on negotiations. The Conseil du Patronat du Québec has underscored that the attention being paid to the Quebec forestry industry is significant. And the Quebec Forestry Council has expressed its satisfaction with our action for Quebec. We are looking for a good agreement.
EU. The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Nunavik, EU. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Along with being responsible for youth issues, I believe I heard the Prime Minister promise a new nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous peoples. And yet his government hasn't kept its promise to First Nations youth. The new minister's briefing notes recommended that she keep her word. But she continues to prefer to cheat First Nations youth. Can the minister explain once again how she justifies her decision to ignore that recommendation from her department? And when will she stop saying one thing in this House and doing something else outside of the House? Honourable Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, it's very important for our government to honor the promises made to Indigenous youth in Canada. It's very important that we have the same level of education, quality education. And this is an issue that is very important for the Prime Minister and for myself. And we will do it.
Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, the first promise the Prime Minister made in the election was to First Nation children. Fast forward a year and we see them trying to stonewall the PBO, pretending that documents on the underfunding of First Nation children don't exist. We find they black out financial documents on Klein, $800 million back from the election promise. And in these documents, one of the minister's staff explains their attitude, and I quote, well, number crunching is for suckers. Whoa. No. Keeping an election promise on funding education isn't about suckers. It's about children and our responsibility to them. So why the stonewalling from her department?
I thank the member for the question, and I reiterate our government's committed to openness and transparency, and we respect the value and work done by the Parliamentary Budget Officer and his team. Unfortunately, and I apologize for this, there was a misunderstanding between my department and the information the PBO was seeking. Departmental officials have offered to meet with the officials from the Parliamentary Budget Office, and we will ensure that they get all of the information that they require in order to hold this government accountable.
The Honourable Member for Brassard-Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. In October, Canada celebrates Women's History Month. We are celebrating the victories and challenges women in Canada have overcome. But an area where women are still facing obstacles is with corporate Canada. There's a lack of visible diversity in our boardrooms. Mr. Speaker, given that Canadian businesses are the responsibility of the minister, what is the minister doing to fix this issue? The Honourable Minister. Thank you for raising this important question. Mr. Speaker, last week I had the pleasure of tabling Bill C-25, which will strengthen transparency and diversity in corporate Canada. It will contribute to ensuring that women play a greater role in boards of administration. And I will invite all members to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, a recent report says Chinese peacekeepers failed to protect civilians on a UN mission in Sudan. In the face of the conflict, they abandoned their weapons, leaving behind weapons and ammunition, and turned their backs on over 300 people who were killed and thousands more were raped. But we learned this week that the government of China wants to take control of all UN peacekeeping missions. The Prime Minister knew all of this, yet he is still naively pledging 600 Canadian troops to the UN. Does the Prime Minister believe that the communist dictatorship in China is qualified to command Canadian troops?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to peace operations, Canada is taking a leading role in this. Hence the reason why Canada was asked by the United Nations to host the next year's peacekeeping summit. When it comes to anything where our troops go abroad, we make sure that they have the right equipment, the proper robust rules of engagement, and we always maintain full command of those missions, and also making sure there's a robust mandate for it, regardless of the troop contributions to any mission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, we learned in The Guardian that last July, UN peacekeepers did nothing to help civilians and aid workers who were assaulted, raped, and killed outside their camps. We even learned that Chinese peacekeepers abandoned their posts when things got particularly hot. The Liberals are happy to see that China is aiming to lead UN peacekeeping operations. Given these revelations, does the government still support China's candidacy?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the protection of civilians, I've been very clear that Canada will ensure that there's a proper mandate, making sure that there is protection of civilians in that mandate, and making sure that all troop-contributing nations fulfill that mandate. And when Canada comes to its final decision, we also will do our part. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, it looks like the President of the Treasury Board has decided all on his own that he's above the rules. He used to be the chair of Seafort Capital, a major company in Atlantic Canada that is backed by powerful families in the region. When he joined Cabinet, his husband replaced him on the board. Canadians won't believe that these families and this corporation have no influence on this minister. What is stopping the President of the Treasury Board from doing the right thing and putting up a screen to end this obvious conflict?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I've always worked with and been open with the Commissioner's office. As a public office holder, my holdings are publicly disclosed. They are in a blind trust, and I don't discuss that with my partner in the same way that, as a cabinet minister, I don't discuss cabinet business with my partner. Mr. Speaker, the Commissioner decides if a screen is necessary, and based on the facts, she has said it is not.
Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Well, Mr. Speaker, his spouse is the chair of the board. The family personally contributed $50,000 to his leadership campaign, and the family flew him to Mexico, Berlin, Davos, and Dublin, just a reminder. Canadians aren't buying that this family has no influence over the minister. How can this minister stand here with a straight face and claim that this is not a major conflict of interest?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, the trips to which she's referring were fully disclosed, in fact, pre-approved by the Ethics Commissioner. In each case, I was accompanying Mr. Sobey because we were both members of the Trilateral Commission and also invitees to the World Economic Forum Davos meetings. Mr. Speaker, sponsored travel is something that all members of Parliament fully disclose. That's what I did, and I would recommend to her and her colleagues to do the same thing.
Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
In the last election, the Liberals promised to restore habitat protections to the Fisheries Act, gutted by the Conservatives in 2012. So far, this government has done nothing to restore these lost protections. They're approving projects that impact fisheries habitat, still using Harper's gutted version of the Fisheries Act. And this week, the Environment Commissioner revealed the government is failing to sustainably manage threatened fish stocks. So I asked the minister, will he make good on their promise to immediately restore the lost protections to the Fisheries Act?
Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his question. He knows well that our commitment was to restore the lost protections that the previous government had gutted in a series of omnibus budget bills. He will also know that we've asked the Fisheries Committee, on which he's a member, to immediately consult with Canadians and advise us not simply how to cut and paste the protections that were there in the previous legislation deleted by the Conservatives, but how we could further strengthen them to ensure that fish habitat across the country is protected in the best possible way. And we look forward to working with him on that very important issue.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Loire. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Employment Minister bragged about fighting youth employment with the Canada Summer Jobs Program. But young graduates need a stable, quality, long-term job to start their lives. It takes more than just a 3-month job, Mr. Speaker. The reality speaks for itself. Youth unemployment is at 13%. That's double the Canadian average. The Liberals promised 5,000 green jobs for youth, and we've seen just 2,000 created. That's not good enough. What is the Minister of Youth's plan to get youth out of precarious situations?
The Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that recognizes the challenge that young people face in today's economy. Not like the previous government that chose not to address these issues. Instead, we're providing help to go to school, providing help to find the experience that they need, and working with industries and employers from coast to coast to coast to allow them an opportunity to have more co-ops, work placements, which will ensure that young people have a successful career going forward.
Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
In 2014, the RCMP targeted about 11,000 people suspected of fraud in obtaining Canadian citizenship by misrepresenting their residency in Canada. And there's many other cases that have been flagged by immigration officers. The minister has said he wants to amend Bill C-6 to allow those cases access to a lengthy and costly appeals process that will divert resources away from people who play by the rules. Just wondering why on earth the minister wants to do this.
Good question. Well, Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely true that the Auditor General recently identified examples of citizen fraud under the previous government's watch, and we have responded by saying we would attack this fraud assiduously and diligently and with great seriousness, because citizenship is an extraordinary privilege, and those who seek to obtain it improperly will be gone after, and that is indeed what my department is doing.
Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, adding a lengthy and costly appeals process is not supporting those who play by the rules. In fact, adding a process like this may actually make cheats more incentivized to game the system, and I think that actually might make immigration officers' jobs a lot more difficult to do. So if the minister already has discretionary powers to overturn rulings by immigration officers, why is he looking to put more support in place for those who cheat rather than encouraging support for those who play by the rules?
Well, Minister of Immigration.
Speaker, the honourable member seems to not to understand that two things are compatible. On the one hand, we are going after with great vigour those who would cheat the system and obtain their citizenship fraudulently, and the RCMP uncovered a ring of people doing that. We are going after them. That said, someone whose citizenship has been revoked should have the opportunity to appeal that decision, and we have said we are open to amendments that may be suggested in the Senate to offer an appeal process.
Member for Thornhill.
Canadians know the Liberals practice a very quiet diplomacy when it comes to human rights abuse in China or with China's military expansionism in the South China Sea, but it's time for this government to stand up against China's thuggish behaviour in Canada. Bad enough the Liberals didn't protest when China blocked Taiwan's usual observer role at the civil aviation meeting in Montreal, but Mr. Speaker, how could the government remain silent when China blocked a Canadian citizen, a journalist, from covering that meeting in Canada?
The Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I reject the premise of the question. Clearly, the government of Canada is not silent in China. The government of Canada advocates the case for universal human rights in China in every occasion, and we do it very strongly, and we are there. That's the big difference with the opposition, when the opposition was the government, when in fact they were staying in Canada instead of arguing the case of human rights in China.
Order. The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, this summer the Minister of Finance reached a historic agreement in principle between the federal government and the provinces to enhance the Canada Pension Plan. This deal is part of the government's commitment to help middle-class Canadians at every stage of their lives by putting more money in their pockets when they retire. This week, the government has moved forward with implementing the agreement.
Would the Parliamentary Secretary please update the House as to the work being done to enhance the Canada Pension Plan?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Vaughan Woodbridge for his excellent question. This historic agreement in principle will help Canadians to be better off by boosting the amount they will receive from the Canada Pension Plan by about 50%. Currently, 1 in 4 Canadian families aren't saving enough for their retirement. Something has to be done. On Tuesday, we received confirmation from British Columbia that they support a stronger CPP. Today, our government tabled legislation that will make these changes law. We're proud to support Canadians at every stage of their lives, and we will continue that as a priority.
Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Speaker, when I rose in the House before the question period to call on the government to make the return of the Azure children a priority, the Minister of Foreign Affairs made rude and unparliamentary gestures. Alison Azure is in Ottawa today and witnessed as the Minister gave a thumbs down as we called on the Minister to make the return of her children a priority. Will the Minister stand in his place and apologize to this House and apologize to Alison Azure?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition is free to behave as they want. But the proof is that when we work together without cheap shot against the Prime Minister, against accusing, when we don't accuse him to not care, as my colleague said.
Order, order, order. Members want to be listened to when they speak, so it's time they listen when someone else is speaking, whether they like what they're saying or not. Members don't want to lose a question. The member for Bruce Grey Owen Sound wouldn't want that. So he should settle down. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Proof that is that when we work together, we have result. And we want to have result for this family. We want the children to be in the arms of their mother. For that, I urge all my colleagues to stop to do politics and to work all together. We have the proof with us today that when we work together, when they get good results for Canadians.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie, order. For years, Montrealers who work or live close to the Canadian Pacific rails in Montreal have been asking for safe pedestrian crossings. This railway is an artificial barrier. It's a major obstacle for pedestrians and cyclists. And the thing is that everyone agrees. The city, local, provincial, and federal politicians, including my colleague from Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Unfortunately, nothing is being done. CP isn't listening, and the Transport Minister refuses to act. Do they really want to promote active transit and quality of life? When will they listen to the people of Montreal? The Honourable Minister of Transport. I'd like to thank my colleague for his passion on this issue. As he knows, there has been an interaction between the City of Montreal and CP. This interaction did not lead to results, and today the City of Montreal is going to ask for arbitrage with the National Transportation Office. This will be dealt with there. This is a procedure that is in place, and we're going to follow it. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Moncton, Riverview-Dieppe.
I worked at the Kodiak Regional RCMP for over 23 years. I have seen the brave women and men in the RCMP put themselves in harm's way to keep Canadian communities safe, and they deserve to be treated with respect in the workplace. Sadly, we know that there has been a long-standing issue in our national police force involving workplace harassment. Can the Minister of Public Safety update the House on the status of the 2 class action lawsuits filed by the current and former women who work within the RCMP?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, earlier today, the RCMP announced a settlement with the women involved in these cases, including an independent compensation process under the guidance of former Supreme Court Justice Bastarache. The Commissioner also issued a solemn apology. This historic moment is testament to the courage and perseverance of the women who led this effort and the deep desire of all parties to move forward to ensure that all RCMP members have the safe and respectful work environment they deserve and Canadians expect.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, where are we with Our veteran, Mr. Lalancette, I'll tell you where we're at. For 3 days, this veteran has been on a hunger strike. For 3 nights, he has been sleeping outside on the grounds of the Parliament Hill without a visit from the Prime Minister or the Minister. What the Parliamentary Secretary said yesterday in the House should trouble all members. It appears that certain ministers used a parliamentary committee as a bargaining tactic, when you know very well, Mr. Speaker, that committees have a mandate to act independently of the government. Mr. Speaker, why are the Liberals making promises that they know full well they don't have the power to keep? Thank you.
Secretary.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member knows that I cannot comment on any specific individual or any specific case. Now, listen, I know that veterans have issues they want dealt with. We all know that. Everyone in this House knows that. And the only way we're going to get this right and make things better for our veterans is by working together. Now, I know it's hard. It's hard to open up and to ask for help, but I urge every single veteran that needs that help to do so. It will be there.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Order. Mr. Speaker, it's one thing to ratify an agreement, but it's another thing to implement strategies so that we can keep our promises and meet our objectives. Canada is committed before the whole world to be part of the climate change solution. But the numbers don't lie. They can't do it with half measures. It takes a set non-negotiable cap on emissions. It has to be costly to polluters, and it should pay to be green. Does the government realize that without a hard cap, it's tilting against windmills? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Honourable member for her question, and I thank the Bloc Québécois for their support of the motion last night. We've been clear from the outset that we have a target. We have a target that we are looking to achieve and ideally do better. We are in the process of establishing a plan to ensure that we actually meet or exceed those targets. We have taken substantial steps through the budget, through the work we've done with the Americans, through the work that we're doing on developing a pan-Canadian strategy, and this week through the implementation of a price on carbon across the country. Mr. Speaker, we are working very hard, and we will ensure that we meet our targets and grow our economy concurrently.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, meeting or exceeding, well, listen, the government has just approved the Pacific Northwest LNG pipeline, and it's still pressuring to move forward with the Energy East pipeline. Just these 2 projects will increase greenhouse gas emissions by 40 million tons a year. 40 million tons. I understand that the Liberal strategy to reduce emissions is apparently to increase them. So will the government finally take this problem seriously and say no, completely say no to Energy East?
The Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the member asks this question from time to time in this House, asking the government to make a decision on a project that's currently before a regulator. For the government to make a decision before it's gone through due process would be irresponsible, and we won't do it.
I've received a notice of a question of privilege from the honourable member for Abbotsford.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on a note that we reluctantly raise in this House. There's a lot of back and forth that takes place in this House. Most of it, as you know, is good-natured. When you were in the benches here, you also engage in that sometimes. We all do. And as long as it's good-natured, of course, we accept that. And it adds energy to this House. However, today we were obviously gobsmacked when one of our members here made a gesture that was offensive. Minister. And just to give you some context, as you know, one of our members, our Conservative members, raised the issue of the Azer children who were abducted by their father to Iran against their will and against the will of their mother, Mrs. Azer. Now, our member asked a perfectly legitimate question about what the Foreign Affairs Minister was doing to ensure that those children were returned back to their mother, Mrs. Azer, here in Canada. But those of us on this side of the House were absolutely horrified to see the Foreign Affairs Minister, in response to that question, use a gesture like this. Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, how Mrs. Azer would have reacted when she saw that gesture?
How the Iranians would react.
Or how the Iranians, yeah.
Now, given the fact that these children are still being held captive in Iran by their father, this is a gesture that truly was offensive, not only to this House, but to this family. So, my question to the Minister and a suggestion to you, will the Foreign Affairs Minister now stand up in this House, assure this House that he will have greater respect for you, the members of this House, and the Azer family in the future, and do the right thing and apologize for using such an inappropriate gesture?
Offensive.
And Mr. Speaker,
Offensive.
the Foreign Affairs Minister had the opportunity to stand up once in this House to apologize. He chose not to. In the alternative, if he doesn't do so, I would ask that you review the film and take whatever actions are appropriate to ensure that we restore order in this House. Thank you.
This sounds more like a point of order than a question of privilege because, of course, usually with the question of privilege, the member talks about prima facie cases of contempt and so forth. And the member, Robertsford, very well knows that when he said there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot more forth than there is back, because he knows that because he's often part of it, and I encourage him not to be. Having said that, order. Having said that, if the Minister of Foreign Affairs wishes to respond, I'll allow him to do so. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I would like once again to call all my colleagues to work together on difficult consular cases. We want these children to be with their mother. For that, we should not play politics. We should not question the will of the Prime Minister to solve the solution the way that has been done. And if I express